various basic concepts of the operating system, and even we have discussed the debugging, operating system debugging, and various types of user interfaces. Okay, so these things which we have discussed in the open source operating system, these are all things which we have covered in the last class, right? Now, let us have a look at about the booting process, how the system will start it. When you switch on your system, what are the a sequence or a series of steps to be executed uh, in order to start the computer system. So these things which we have discussed in our current class, and then we'll move to the remaining things. All right. So system boot, the basic input-output system BIOS. Uh, whenever when you switch on the system, in order to execute properly the operating system, the hardware components, or uh, the computer system should all be working correctly for it to boot. So, in order to make sure that all these things are working properly, we need to be boot the system. If during this process, if any one of them are not uh, booted properly, it leads to the failure of the system startup. Okay, suppose say for example, if this operating system is not loaded properly, then what happens? It leads to the some kind of boot up error. Similarly, some of the hardware components are not ready. There also it shows some kind of error message, right? So in order to make everything should work properly, this boot up process will help us. Okay, so now let us see a sequence of steps to be followed, or a sequence of steps are executed while booting the system. So the first one is the BIOS, next the bootloader, kernel, and then finally operating system login. So these are the sequence of steps to be done while booting the system. Now have a detailed look about all these things so that one can easily understand what is happening. So now let us see the series of steps. For the first one is the CPU initializes itself after the power in the computer is first turned on. Okay, and this is done by triggering a series of clock pulses that are generated by the system clock. That means whenever if you switch on, automatically the CPU, central processing system, it initializes itself. That means it was started with its own. Okay, and then so this will be done. How it is going to be started with its one is with its itself is we have a system clock. It continuously generates the clock pulses. Okay, based on that, it is going to be initialized. It's in the DL itself. You might have studied about the system clock while you are studying master slave flip flops. There you can add another input as another input as clock pulse. Okay, with that clock pulse, this is going to be initialized itself. After that, once the CPU has initialized itself, it looks for the system's ROM BIOS to obtain the first instruction in the startup program. So this first instruction is stored in the ROM BIOS, and it instructs the system to run post power on self-test. So once you switch on, you might have observed this kind of screen. You're all having good experience with this, right? When you switch on this, it may be different. Just in this kind of screen, you may see when you switch on the power button, right? Once it was started. So before displaying the screen and after you pressing the power button, what has happened is, what is the first step? CPU has initialized itself. And second one is, CPU looks for the instruction which is present in the ROM BIOS, read-only memory. It is a permanent memory, basic input-output system BIOS transfer. Okay, whatever the instruction that was present in this particular area, okay, that will be executed. Okay, so what it leads to is, after while executing this statement, the system to run power on self-test post. Simply you can call it as a post in a memory address space that is already predetermined. That means some address instruction will be there. So what this start instruction contains is, it just passes the information to the post to start yourself. Okay, what it does is, whatever the address which is specified, already predefined. So that always it is go to that place and start that particular, execute that particular instruction which is present in the memory address. Okay. And then post first check the BIOS chip and then the CMOS RAM if there is no battery failure detected by post. Suppose if your battery is failed, what happens in this case? That is also an hardware component. CMOS batteries, you might have heard about CMOS battery. If it gets failed, then it is unable to, the system is unable to start. Okay, so that is the reason this post verifies whether it contains a battery and it is in working condition or not. Then it continues to initialize the CPU. That means whatever the further instructions that are necessary to start the CPU, those instructions will be initiated for the execution after verifying these two. Okay, so post also checks the hardware devices, secondary storage devices such as hard drives and etc., and other devices such as mouse and keyboard. This is done to make sure that they are working properly. As I told you very beginning, BIOS, which is, so why we require this booting process is in order to execute or in order to start all the hardware components and as well as the operating system in your computer system to work properly. So before going to start the system, one should verify whether all the components are working properly or not. So for that, this post, someone will take care of verifying all these things. So in this case, the post is going to verify whether there is a CMOS battery is present in it or not, and all the devices which are connected to the system are working properly or not, right? Not only hardware, the other devices like mouse and keyboard, these all things are verified by the post. So after post, make sure that all the components are working properly. Then the BIOS finds an operating system loads. So once it verified everything, the next step is operating system should be loaded into the memory for further process, right? So in the most of the computer systems, the operating system loads from the C drive. Usually you might have observed the Windows is present in the your C drive. Okay, and then the CMOS chip typically tells the BIOS where the operating system is found. So this is the responsibility of the CMOS chip where the operating system is available. The order of the different drives that CMOS looks at while finding the operating system is known as the boot sequence. The boot sequence. Suppose if you give it as first you need to verify the E, then D, then C, like that. If you give the order, it follows the same. So whatever the order that it follows, in order to find out where the operating system is available, that is what we are calling it as boot sequence. So this sequence can be changed by changing the CMOS setup. Right? You can change this setup in SIM. Okay. And after finding the appropriate boot drive, the BIOS first finds the boot record, which tells it to find the beginning of the operating system. So once you found the location where it is available, then what is your next job? You need to execute it. You need to start the execution of the operating system. So for that, what we have to do? We need to execute the first instruction. Right? After initialization of the operating system, the BIOS copies the files into the memory. Then the operating system controls the boot process. So once it was loaded successfully, then it takes the control of all the things, because this is only the key point where it will look after all the operations which are going on inside the system. So that is the reason once it was loaded properly, then it will take the control from the BIOS, because up to now, the BIOS will take care of loading, verifying all the hardware components or operating system. These all the things are taken care of by BIOS. Once it was loaded, it will take care of further process. Right? So in the end, the operating system does a final inventory of the system memory and loads the device drivers needed to control the peripheral devices. Okay. So once it was loaded, what it does, once again, it verifies whatever the space is available, because it need to perform various operations like scheduling and all. Okay, so in order to do it, it verifies the memory address and as well as the devices which are connected to it are working properly or not. These all things will be taken care by the operating system itself. So the users can access the system applications to perform various tasks. So why we are using computer system? We need to do certain operations on it. Okay, so without the system boot process, the computer users would have to download all the software components, including the ones not frequently required. Suppose if it is not available, this kind of mechanism is not available, what happens in that case? Each and every time when you want to use the computer system, you need to load all the softwares required for your operation. Okay, and even each and every time, suppose this time you wanted to execute a Word document, right? You want to create a Word document. For that, whatever the softwares, including operating system, all the things you need to be loaded, executed our application, and then finish. After that, you want to perform some operation with the Excel sheet, or you want to create an Excel sheet. What happens in that case? Again, you need to reinstall all these things. So such kind of difficulty that exists when you don't have the booting process, right? So this particular process will free up the user from installing all the things which are required for each and every time, right? Once you install, okay, you can use it for further. Am I right or wrong? Whatever the software that you have installed in your system, they are still available. Whatever the time that you want to access, you can access it. You need not reinstall each and every time when you want to create applications with that, right? Hope you are all clear with this system boot process. Still, if you have any query in this boot process, you can drop a message in the chat box. Otherwise, we move to the next one. Any queries? Right. So up to now, we have covered all the concepts in the first unit itself. Now let us move to, let me check. Yeah. So hope, I think I was covered all these topics. As I told you, still if anyone found any one of the particular concept is not covered, you just bring it into my notice so that we will discuss and we'll finish it, right? Now we'll move to the second unit, which is the very, very important unit in terms of concept or in terms of understanding the basic functionality of the operating system. That is process scheduling, various operations on process. So this is very, very important. Even in terms of competitive examination also, it is very important. There might be a possibility of getting at least one question from this unit in your competitive exams. So all of you listen carefully, and wherever you feel difficulty while understanding the concept, immediately you just bring it into my notice. Don't wait for the last. Okay, all right. So let me start. What exactly the process, the concept of process. Okay. So in this chapter, we are going to be discuss about the process concept, process scheduling, operations and process. Okay. So and then we'll discuss the other topics in the this particular unit. Right. First one is the process. As you all aware of that, uh, it depends upon the operating system. Will treat the process as different. For example, in the batch operating system, where we can submit a bunch of jobs together at a single time for the execution, so such kind of environment will call the process as a job. That means all the bunch of jobs. Okay. And when it is coming to the time sharing system, where the CPU time is shared among the users in a fixed interval, in that case, we'll call this process as user program or simply task. Okay. So it may be varied. So if you don't be confused. We are interchangeably used the job and the process, but whatever it may be the term that we are using, a process means or a job means a program in execution. A process execution must progress in a sequential fashion. For example, you just imagine if you try to execute a simple C program just for a print hello world. Okay, so the whole program, in order to execute that program, what we have to do, you need to open a file where you can type all these instructions or simply your program. Once it was typed or once it was completed, your typing process is completed, what is the next step? You need to try to execute it, right? Who will take care of the execution means the CPU will process all your instructions and finally produce the result. So in order to do it, uh, once you click on this running button, okay, your program need to be loaded into the memory, and then it need to be assigned to the processor. Okay, processor will, I mean CPU will take care of execution of your program, and once everything is completed, it produces the result. So these are the steps that are to be followed for executing your program, right? So once you initiated the execution or once you try to execute your program, that thing is called, I mean, these all steps need to be done sequentially. So a program in execution is called as a process. A process may contain several parts, or simply you can define a process is defined as an entity which represents the basic unit of work to be implemented in the system. You can note down the definition of the process. A process is defined as an entity which represents the basic unit of work to be implemented in the system. So, what I mean to say is, in simple terms, whatever the program that we have tried to execute it, that is nothing but it is an entity where we'll try to execute a unit of work to be implemented in the system itself. All right. So, whenever if you started or whenever you try to execute your program, it becomes a process which performs all the tasks mentioned in the program. Right? So when a program is loaded in the memory and it becomes a process, so and it can be divided into 4 different sections. That is the meaning of this multiple parts. First, have a look at about the parts, how it will be divided, and then we will discuss one after another. Right? So basically, whenever if a process is in memory, it will be split into 4 blocks: stack, heap, data, and text, right? So now let us see what exactly all these things, what is the role of all. So the program code also called text section. So what text section contains is, this includes the current activity represented by the value of the program counter and the contents of the processor registers. Now here, in order to understand this, I just want to know whether you studied 8085 architecture or 8086 architecture microprocessor. Please answer my question, whether you studied previously the microprocessor 8085 or 8086 architecture, either in DLD or somewhere. Say yes or no. Because this is very important. That's why I'm asking you. Did you study it or not? Architecture of a microprocessor. Nobody is responding. Oh, you studied. Okay, very good, very good. So there, just I will try to recollect the data. Okay. So whenever if you submit any program, what happens internally or how your program is executed is, your program will be loaded into the stack. Okay. Whatever the top instruction that is present in the stack, because you know the stack operations, stack data structure. Okay. Last in, first out. LIFO, last in, first out. Whatever the instruction that was present in the last, that was executed first, right? In other words, whatever the instruction which is present in the top of the stack will get first executed, right? So, in order to keep track of all the instructions which are loaded into the stack or getting executed in a counter. That is what? What is the name of the counter? Program counter, which keeps tracks of the address of the next instruction to be executed. Once again, I'll repeat. Program counter contains the address of the next instruction to be executed by the processor. Right? Next instruction to be executed by the processor. So this text section, it includes the current activities represented by the value of the program counter and the contents of processor registers. Okay, so this text extension, simply you can imagine whatever the current code which is compiled code is available, and it is loaded from volatile memory, that is from main memory to the execution part. That information is present in the text section, right? And next is the stack. This contains the temporary data such as your local variables, variables which you have declared in your program, or the function names which you have specified in your program. This all the written address. Okay, this all information is available or stored in the stack. And next, heap. Heap means it is a dynamically allocated memory. So when we while studying pointers, you might have studied about this dynamic memory allocation. In C language, you are supposed to use malloc and calloc methods, or in C++, you can use the new and delete methods for allocating and deallocation of the memory space dynamically, right? So such kind of information is maintained in the heap section. Another one is data section. data section contains the global and static variables. Global variables means which can be used anywhere in the program. Whereas local variables are executed or local variables are accessed within the scope of that variable only. That means suppose if you declare a variable in the main program, what is the scope of that variable? In between the opening press and closing press of the main function only, it is available. Suppose if you declare a variable outside of the main, what happens in that case? That variable can be used either in the main or some other function in your program. Okay, so such kind of information is stored in the data section. So these are the various parts of the operating system. I mean, sorry, not operating system, the process. The process can contain, these are the four parts. Here you can observe stack and heap are start at opposite ends of the processes free space. So whatever the space that is visible between stack and heap are process of free space. So from this, stack is followed in this direction, whereas heap is grown in this direction. Suppose if they ever meet, definitely one point of time they should be meet each other. Suppose if they ever meet, then you might have observed the errors like stack overflow or stack warfare will be occurred, or else a call to the new or malloc will fail due to insufficient memory is available. Right? Suppose if these two are not met at a particular point, you may get an error from stack side like stack overflow, or from heap side you may get an error like when you are using malloc or new methods for the allocation of the memory, it gets failed. Like you got a message like insufficient memory is available. Okay, so that is happen when they are not, when they ever met. Okay, and another important point is when the processes are swapped out of memory and later restored, additional information must also be stored and restored. Suppose this is the process which is currently being executed, right? At a particular point of time, suppose if the process requires the services of the IO device, what happens in that case? CPU temporarily suspend this process and allocate it to the IO devices. Okay, so in that case, what happens? Wherever the last instruction was executed, that information will need to be kept for future users. Future users means, okay, now this was allocated to IO device. IO device is executed this particular process. After that, it return back. So in that case, from where it need to start or from where it continues its execution. So for that purpose, we need to maintain whatever the last instruction that it was executed, address of the last instruction that it was executed. Right? So once it finish all these things, without worrying about anything, directly it can start from the next address of that particular address which is available. Okay? So this kind of information, storing and restoring and some additional information is also be necessary to keep. And key among them are the program counter and the value of all the program registers. Okay, so using the program counter, we'll do all these things, that is loading the address of the next instruction to be executed and all. So these things will be loaded using the program counter, right? And now let us look at about the program life cycle or the program state. Now hope you are all clear what exactly the process or any query, because it is very essential in order to understand the latter concepts in this particular unit. Are you clear with the process, or can I repeat it once again? Okay, thank you. Right. Now, let us see the process life cycle or the process state. So, when a process executes, it passes through different states. That means initially it should be ready. One first step is the process is created. That means once the program starts its execution, it will become process. So that means what it means, a new process has created. What is the next step? The process get ready for the execution. That means this process need to be placed in the queue in order to get the permission from the CPU. In order to get the service of CPU, it need to be placed in the ready state. Once it was ready, definitely, once it turns come, definitely it starts its execution. That is running state. Okay. After that, it may be in waiting state. Like somebody started their videos and all. Okay, make sure that all you put it your videos and audios in mute. Whenever, if you have any query, you can unmute yourself and you can ask, no issue. Right. So like that, at any given point of time, if you observe, the process should be any one of these 5 states. And one important point here I want to mention is it may be changed, depends upon the operating system. The names, probably the meaning will be the same, but the names may be different in different operating systems. So in this current operating system, we are calling a new, running, waiting, ready, terminated. But if you observe some other operating systems, what they will call it as, instead of new, they can call it as a start. Both of them, the functionality is same, but the names may be different. Okay, ready, running, terminated, and wait. So wherever you observe, even though you have different name for this, don't be confused. Okay, try to understand what is the functionality of each and every state. That is more important. Okay, now let us see this process life cycle diagram or process state diagram. Okay, initially, whenever if a process has created, that state is called as new state. Okay, so once it was started, the next step is ready. The process has all the resources available that needs to run, but the CPU is not currently working on this process's instruction. This particular process is created and it is ready. All the necessary resources are loaded, but at this moment, CPU is working some other process. So it should be in waiting state, right? So ready, but it is ready for the execution. Next when it will be moved to the running. So once the CPU is completed its processes, I mean, whatever the process that is being executed, okay, then immediately it will look after the ready process. Okay, so now whatever the process is ready, that can be started executing. So how it will be done? How it will be moved from here to your running state? Okay, see, for all these things, because CPU gets information like somebody is waiting for you. Once you finish this task, you please look after them. Like that, it passes some information. That is what we are called as an interrupt. That can be done with the help of system call. Hope you're all clear. Okay. So once the CPU is free, this particular process is assigned to the CPU for the running. So during the execution of your process, suppose if you require the services of IO device, or if you require the services of some other program or some other process, what it has to do is temporarily suspends. Okay, and then it will be put it into the either maybe. So whenever if it is IO related services are required, it will be in waiting state. Right? Once it was completed, again it will be, the process will state changes its states from waiting to ready. Once it was ready, then it get a chance of, then it will get the chance of executing it. Okay. So during this time, if CPU wants any other service, what happens in that case? Simply it was suspended and put it to ready state. So once everything is went well, all the instructions are executed properly, then the execution of the process is over, right? So that can be represented as terminated. Terminated means when it will be entered into the state, once all this process is executed properly, then the process is entered into the terminated state. So at any given point of time, if you are looking about the process, it should be in any one of the state. Either it may be in a new state at the time of creation, and after that, once everything was loaded, it will be entered into the ready state and waiting for the response from the CPU. So once it get a chance, it changes its state from ready to running, and it gets executed by the CPU. So during the execution of the process, or when it is in the running state, if it needs the services of IO devices or any other, what happens in this case? It will be in the temporarily it was suspended, and it will be in the waiting state, waiting for the other resources that are needed to complete the execution, right? So once it got the services of IO devices, for example, simple thing, you just let us assume that you have two instructions in program like program printf enter AB values, right? After that, you wrote a statement like the scanf percentage d ampersand a ampersand. What is the meaning of this? User has to enter two different values so that it can be read, and then it will process further. See, in that case, what happens? So in order to display the contents in the screen, it needs the IO device. So that is the reason it will be from the running state, it will be entered into the waiting state to get the IO devices. So what is the first time which it wants? It wants the services of the output device. Okay. Okay. Enter AB values as display. What is the next? It need to wait for the user response by entering the AB values. Right? So once these two are entered, then that means the IO task is completed. So immediately from waiting state to it will be moved to the ready state, because it utilizes the services of these IO devices, and the task is completed. Then it is ready for the execution of the remaining part of the program. Okay. So once it was entered to the ready state, again it will be moved to the running state. Once the CPU is free. Okay. Like that, the process is repeated. Once all the instructions are executed, it will be entered into the terminated state. There ends the matter. So this is the various states that exist right from the beginning of the process creation to process termination. Right? This is called as process life cycle. Now, coming to discuss about another important thing is process control block. Process control block, which is the data structure maintained by the operating system for every process. For every process, it maintains the information of all these things. Okay. So the PCB or process control block. Okay. The PCB contains the following information. It contains the first one is process ID or process number, okay, or process state. First one, the process state means, as you know, at any given point of time, any process can be in any one of the 5 states. What are those? New, ready, running, waiting, and terminated. Right? What is the state of that process right now? That will be represented with the process state and process number. Okay. A process number. So program counter, as I told you, program counter maintains the location of the instruction that could be executed next. Okay. And CPU registers the contents of all process-centric registers. So in order to execute your process, what are the contents that are to be loaded into the registers? Okay, that information is available in the CPU registers. Okay, and CPU scheduling information. CPU scheduling information in the sense, what way your processes are getting executed. As I told you, hospital example, some patients are waiting for the doctor's appointment. Okay, let us assume that 4 patients are there. Doctor is one after another. He may call the patients and he will inquire about all the problems that are faced by the patient, and he will do some prescription. This is the process is going on. All of a sudden, some heart attack patient has entered to the hospital. What happens in that case? Whether we keep him to wait until the 4th patient has completed, or we'll allow them to process first, like that. The priorities, what is the policy that you have followed for executing the processes which are in waiting state, right? Or which are in ready state, not waiting, which are in ready state, because all these patients are ready. They're ready to get their turn. Okay, so whatever the policy that you have followed for executing all your processes, that is what we are called as scheduling, right? What kind of scheduling that it follows. And memory management information. Example, pacing, segmentation, these all things are maintained. So here, the accounting information. Accounting information means CPU, whatever the time that is used by the kernel and the CPU, what the time consumption, whatever the time that is on, and the limits. What is the maximum limit that it will have? This all information will be maintained in the accounting information, or simply you can call it as memory limits. Okay, and IO status information. Whatever the IO devices that are allocated for this particular process, and how many number of files that are in open state, these all will be information will be recorded in this. So like that, the operating system will maintain the information which is related to this particular process in a table. That is what we are called as process control block. Okay. And you can observe how a process is shifted from process to process. CPU, how CPU, as I told you, whenever the currently executing process requires the services of IO device. What happens in that case? Simply, it stops the execution of the current process and switches to the another process. So that what happens in that case, the CPU is always, it becomes busy, so that the number of process gets executed in the period of time. Right? So here you can observe, this is the process 0 and process 1. These are the two processes. Okay. So the CPU is executing the first process. Okay. That is being interrupted or by a system call and saved to the state into the PCB. The system, once it was interrupted, what happens in that case? Temporarily it was suspended. That means kept in the waiting state. Okay, and it, whatever the last instruction that was executed by the process 1, that will be reloaded. Where it is available? It is available in the program counter, which is available in the PCB of this particular process. And from that instruction, it was starts its execution. Right? So during this period of time, until completion of this particular part of execution, this particular process is idle. Right? So once it gets the address of the second process to be executed, okay, it starts its execution. Right? Meanwhile, if it IO task is completed, immediately it interrupts this process and it comes back. Like that, it will be shifted from one process to another process. What happens in the switching process is, the switching will be done because of the interrupt or the system call. Somebody has pass a control system to disturb its execution, like I want the services of you. Like that, they pass some information, right? Once it was interrupted, then what it does, it simply suspends whatever it is being executed currently, and then it will look after what to be executed next. Here you can observe the last instruction address will be loaded into the PCB's process zeros PCB, and then it reloads the process one's address, because once its execution is completed, again it need to be reload this address, because it need to continue its execution after this particular instruction. Okay, so in such a way it was switched from one process to another process. So that is about a little bit about the process. Hope you are all clear with this, right? Or if you have any queries, you can ask. No issue. Are you clear with this process, introduction to process? Or still, if you have any queries, you can ask.